Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Industrial Real Estate Show. I am pleased to be joined by C'Jon Armstead, a broker out of Florida with CBRE. And we're going to talk about a little bit about Florida's industrial market, but the C'Jon and I talked a little bit beforehand, and we're going to actually talk a lot about cold calling on this episode. So for anyone who's interested in more cold outreach, whether you're a broker, whether you're an investor, a developer, anybody who just wants to drum up more activity, I think you'll get a lot from hearing C'Jon's experience in the cold calling industry. But first, C'Jon, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
I'm so excited to be here, Chad. And I've watched so many of your videos, and to be able to be a part of it is a true honor. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for that. And I'm really looking forward to this one because when we chatted the other day, you'd mentioned some of the episodes that stood out were the one with Henry, one with Bob Knackle, Benjamin Dennehy was another great one where we talked a lot about cold calling and prospecting in general. And we found that those are some of the most popular episodes because people really get some good tips and insights into something that's not necessarily a glamorous part of the business. No kid grows up thinking, I can't wait to be a cold caller or a telemarketer. But so it's not a glamorous part of the business, but it's so important. So before we get into that specifically, what got you into industrial real estate in general?
Man, I'll kind of give you the long backstory that all leads us to grungy square boxes that sell and are hitting the top of the market in these days. But from South Florida, born and raised, uh, I did not think I'd be selling buildings. My biggest dream was to play baseball. So my dad actually was a professional baseball player, and so I was sure that that's what I was going to be doing. Played all the way up into college, but went walked on, thought it was going to be an easy gig, and then realized very quickly that they were only going to pick up anybody walking on if they were going to be drafted the next year. So quickly, reality hit me really hard, and I realized that potentially I would have to figure something else out. Shortly after that, my family's from India. My mom's side is from India, so they all were like, "Go be a doctor." Well, I studied medicine and went through the whole course to go to become a physician, and I loved it. I loved learning about medicine. I loved shadowing. I did all the surgery, uh, rotations and shadowing like that, and I thought that that's what I would want to do. But I'm a man of many dreams. I had a lot of passions in life, and one of the other things that I was very passionate about was music. So I was writing a lot of music. I got involved with the church, and I worked as a worship pastor, worship leader for a long time, and was really trying to jumpstart my music career. But quickly after I started going all in on that, my wife and I were expecting our first kid. And so right after my wife gave birth, she had a short 3 month maternity leave and had to go back to work. And essentially, I had a really cool gig. I was a part time worship guy, writing music, raising the baby, my daughter Mila, for the first 6 months of her life. And I remember my wife coming home one day and saying, I can't do this. I need to be home with the baby. And I said, quit your job. I'll figure it out. And I had no idea what I was going to do. But I immediately reached out to some people that I knew, and they introduced me to a guy named Clayton Idle, who was the managing director of a publication here in South Florida called South Florida Business and Wealth. He needed a sales guy. I never did anything sales related. He hired me, and little did I know that I really enjoyed business development, meeting people, meeting with C-suite executives, going to events. That really fired me up. And the hunt, I realized that I had that desire for the hunt. Only about 9 months later, the guy who introduced me to Clayton Idol saw what I was doing and was like, I need you on my team. So I actually ended up pivoting into philanthropy. So he brought me into the world of philanthropy, making grants to organizations across Palm Beach County that were improving health outcomes for individuals. But he also wanted me to sell brand ideas to developers, high net worth individuals. And so he stole me from Clayton Idol, and I started working for him for about 5.5 years. But after 5.5 years, unfortunately, we never got to a place where I could utilize that part of why he brought me on. I was doing a lot of admin and enjoyed what I did. It was very fulfilling work, but I still kind of missed the hunt. I reconnected with Clayton Idol, and he had just joined the family office and developer about 2 years prior. And so I was just reaching out to him, trying to look for, hey, do you know anybody who could give me a job in sales? Do you know of anything? And he said, well, we just started a commercial brokerage in the family office. I don't know if you ever considered commercial real estate, but I think you'd be good. But you're gonna have to get a license, and you gotta, go through these steps, gotta learn a little bit. I said, all right. So I immediately left that lunch that we had, and I signed up for a 7-day course, went all in, took the 7-day course, called him thereafter. I said, hey, I got my license. He's like, oh, you signed up for the real estate course? I said, no, I got my license. He's like, oh, all right, let's go. Let's do this. So I jumped in, and one of the first podcasts that I watched was Henry and you. I actually followed Henry quite a bit, met him in person. He was a great mentor. Learned really that's where I got my first stint of cold calling was through Henry Eisenstein and his training. And I watched the industrial podcast. And funny enough, the last thing I wanted to sell was industrial real estate. I was like, that sounds way too hard. I want something that's super sexy, super easy. But when I first got involved, I just started cold calling on everything and anything. And it was office, retail, multifamily. And the owners that gave me the hardest time were the industrial owners. So I made sure to not cold call those guys as much as I could. But quickly I started to realize that that's where the market was, industrial real estate. Office really hit a standstill. Multifamily was a bit saturated, at least in South Florida, and it was really hard to get deals done multifamily. And retail just isn't a fast mover. But industrial, I started to catch some headwinds after I realized it's worth banging your head against the wall with some of these guys. And they're probably the most special owners, I would say. They're very different. But yeah, that's kind of how I got involved with industrial real estate.
That's such a windy road from where you started being baseball, going into medical, going into the church world, going into philanthropy, business development, and then ending up in industrial real estate. That's such an unpredictable and windy road, but it's awesome that's where you got to right now because it is such an awesome industry. So let's jump in there because I'd really love to hear some of what's worked and perhaps what hasn't worked, and maybe even take me back to some of your first phone calls. So you're just calling people at random. Some of the industrial guys were tougher. What was your message when you just reached out? Well, what was your opener? What was your general message? What was your intended takeaway?
It's interesting because when I joined the family office, I remember my partner Clayton Idol. He's one of the best tenant rep brokers, but he would consider himself a generalist. I thought commercial real estate was just calling owners and see if they want to sell. So I came in day one. He's like, "Do you want to shadow? Do you want to go on tours? What do you think would be helpful?" I said, "I'm just going to cold call." So I ended up going on CoStar, figuring out how to pull a list, pulled that list, and just started cold calling these owners. Um, my script was, "Would you be against an offer?" And if you do enough of that, you're going to get some people who would be interested in seeing what you can put together. But one of the hardest parts, I would say, after doing thousands of cold calls and working on hundreds of deals, is that I quickly realized when I came in with that frame, immediately I started to come off too transactional. And it was difficult to establish enough rapport and a relationship and a true path to actually doing something when I started off in that manner. Although I was really good on the phones and I was able to eventually meet some of these owners in person, you realize that if you come in a frame of like, hey, do you want to sell? They're only going to be looking at you as if you can you bring me an offer or not? I'm going to give you as little information as possible. And if you hit a number that interests me, I may interact with you. But you know more than anybody, it's very hard to get a lot of deals done when you only come with that frame. And you can't discover true motivation if you're just asking over the phone, do you want to sell today or not? Give me a rent roll. They don't even know you from John. And in industrial, I don't know what it's like up in Canada, but at least in Florida, these guys have dozens of brokers calling them daily right now because of the fact that industrial is one of the best asset classes, the easiest to move in this market, and has experienced the probably the greatest growth with when it comes to rental rates, price per square foot on a sale, and almost zero vacancy. So I realized I started hitting my head on the wall a lot, going after a lot of deals, and unfortunately, a lot of deals fell apart because of that approach. And I think in the beginning of 2025, late 2024, I really started to think through this is not this is not a sustainable way to build a business, just cold calling and seeing if these guys want to sell. I had to figure out what could I do to make this a more sustainable business. You know more than anybody after being in it over 20 years. That's the biggest question all of us brokers are wondering. How can I keep doing this? How can I make this sustainable instead of chasing one deal at a time, hoping it works? It's such an unpredictable business. How do you make it more predictable? And at that time, as I was really going through all of these thoughts and emotions and wondering how can I just keep myself in the game, my partner now, Tyler Coleman, who had just joined CB a year prior, and they charged him with building the mid-market investment sales division for Florida. He had reached out to me. He had been following me on LinkedIn. He'd been tracking my progress. I was sharing so much about cold calling. A lot of my content was just me sharing everyday conversations and trying to keep myself accountable. That was really my content strategy, and it worked out. And it caught some people's attention, and most importantly, Tyler's. And he had reached out to me, and he was like, "Hey, how's it going? How you seem to be getting a lot of opportunities. Are you closing? How is everything working out?" And I shared my pain points. I shared that, look, I mean, I'm getting people interested, but it's hard to bridge the gap. I got a lot of buyers who are reaching out to me for deals. I'm contacting enough sellers, but I can't really get that magic where you just get a lot of deals popping and getting under contract left and right. So he brought me on. He took a chance on me, and quickly started to see the shift of you still got to keep. I think more than anything, for anyone who's cold calling, it's really not what you're saying; it's how you make people feel on the phones. And I started to. I've always been pretty good talking to people, but one of the most intimidating things was trying to change my whole strategy. And that was the hardest part coming on is like, you're trying to go from, do you want to sell to leading with some type of value? What can I get this person interested enough that they should meet me? And that's very hard. You realize you actually have to know stuff. You need to know what's going on in the market. You need to know where rents are. You need to know where price per square foots are on sale. You need to track activity, track new leases. And even though I was tracking those things, I felt a little bit intimidated of needing to be an expert and needing to be perfect on the phone. And I thankfully, just making enough calls, you start to feel out what's important to an owner when you're not coming in super transactional. I'll pause there because that's a lot of info. But once I made that shift and I started to just lead a little bit more with, here's what we're seeing. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting or speaking with you. I've got this deal or I've got this comp, and I just want to put a face to it. And that really opened up the door for some, not only a lot more meetings and a lot more opportunities to do BOVs, but just more traction.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And I think that that applies neatly across the board, but specifically to cold calling, you're right. If you approach it purely from a standpoint that it's just transactional, that they know that you're just calling to see if they would sell, and sellers are smart and sophisticated. They know exactly why you're calling. And if that's all that it is, they're just going to treat you almost like a waiter coming to your table, and they're going to order their drink and they're going to order their food and they expect you to go back and forth. Whereas if you're the perhaps manager of the restaurant, you're going to have a different relationship where you're trying to establish some rapport and you want them to be repeat customers and you want to see how their experience was. It's a different lens that you look through, and I think that that is important versus just pure volume of just I'm going to go and make 100 cold calls and I hope that one of them is interested in selling and the other 99 are going to tell me to screw off and maybe hang up on me. I just need that one. That's a tough way to have sustainability in cold calling because your success rate is so low. When you shifted to that approach of let's try and build a rapport here, let's try and build a relationship. I think I had a pretty good understanding of how you were doing at the beginning. It was really just, hey, I'm looking to see if there's anyone wanting to sell properties because I have a lot of buyers. Would you look at an offer to sell your property right now? As simple as that is, it's not going to work all the time, but it will work occasionally. Then you had that shift where it was now I'd like to provide you something of value. And this is what Bob Knackle always has always stuck with me is that's what Bob's approach is he's always wants to share something. So I want to share a new market report or I want to share this new comp that came up. And he's always just trying to share information as opposed to just asking if they want to sell. Is that fair to say that that's what the shift was is instead of now saying I've got a bunch of buyers, would you consider selling? What did your script look like then, I guess? What, like, assuming that that's stayed and it's constant right now, what would that look like if you're calling somebody, I own a property, you got me on a list, you call me, what does your script look like right now?
Yeah. So there's so many different things that I use now with regards to why I'm calling somebody. So in particular, I have a deal that I'm selling in your market, or here's a comp that I know is comparable. I didn't know if you saw this. Here's development, but I'll walk through the one that I'm using even today because we are going to be selling a large $30 million industrial portfolio in a specific market. And I'm calling all the owners, and it essentially goes, "Hey, Chad, this is C'Jon, CBRE. Uh, the reason I was calling is we're selling an industrial property not too far away from the building that you own. Admire your portfolio. Haven't had the pleasure of speaking with you. Just curious if that's something you take a look at." And immediately they're kind of curious. They're not, their guard may be up, but they're like, okay, well, they're more like, well, where's the building? And you share a little bit of info. And then you're like, well, look, again, I haven't had the pleasure of speaking with you. What are you taking a look at? And then it opens the conversation. And not every time do people are very responsive. I'll get guys who are like, I'm not looking for anything, not looking to buy, not looking to sell, not looking to do anything. The reality is those are probably not people I want to work with anyways right now. In our brokerage business, we're looking to work with people who are active in the market. I will still stay in touch with those people, keep them up to speed on the deal on the deal that we're selling. Hey, went under contract at this price. Okay. Hey, we sold it at this price. This is a market sale, a new record sale or whatnot. But it'll either be something like that, or if you're leading with, some people don't have a deal that they're selling. And that's one of the hardest things when you get into a value oriented firm. Maybe you don't have a deal. This market that I'm calling it right now, I had no deal. And it was very difficult in the beginning of why am I calling? Well, I had to scour the market. I looked at market reports. I looked at a development nearby. And my intro, and it was my first BOV coming in, breaking into this market, not focusing on, hey, do you want to sell? Is I saw that there was 5 million square feet of development coming into that area with the developer. I personally called that developer, asked them what they were doing, tell me more about the plans, tell me more about this. They gladly gave me the information, actually met with those people. And then every owner I called nearby that owned small bay industrial, I called them and said, hey, this is C'Jon, CBRE. I was calling because we're tracking almost 2 million square feet of industrial development. And haven't had the pleasure of speaking with you. I'm just curious if you were following that as well and just wanted to get to know you a little bit better. And surprisingly, a lot of people were receptive to that. And again, some people will not be receptive to you reaching out to them. And it just goes to the point that you will start to feel the people that you actually want to meet, the people you want to do business with. And it'll discourage you a lot less than just calling to see if this person wants to sell. Because I know if I would have called that guy who gave me that first BOV and said, "Hey, do you want to sell?" He would have told me no, because when we met with him, he told me how many people call him every week. And he just tells them, "No, I don't want to sell. No, I don't want to sell." And he never meets with any of these people. But we met with him. We know deeply what his strategy is with the real estate. We know intricately what his plans are. Even though we did a BOV, we know he's an older guy. He's got no basis. His kids, he's leaving an inheritance to his kids. We know intricately all the tenants, but I would have never known any of this stuff if I just called him and said, "Do you want to sell?" Now, I will say to your point, it does work. You just got to be okay with doing an insane amount of volume, and you've got to hope that that compounds somehow, because I just don't know how your brand and your notoriety in the marketplace and your even your brand to your buyers, because your buyers are probably going to know you're only really looking for to get them the cheapest deal. But if you're in a true life cycle of a piece of property, do you only want them to call you when they're looking for an opportunity, or do you want them to call you when they're looking to sell too? And I think Bob Knackel, I always reflect on your podcast with Bob Knackel. I love it. Anytime I get discouraged, when I feel like I'm missing out on deals and I keep seeing all this off market activity, I always remind myself I'm okay with people not wanting to buy through me, but I want them to call me whenever they're ready to sell. And I think if you're focused on really going deeply into, I am an exclusive listing broker. I sell commercial real estate. I don't call guys to see if they want to have me bring a buyer, because then I'm just another commodity. I'm not another broker on the phone just looking for a quick win. And you know more than anybody, being in this business for as long as you have, there are very few quick wins. The market will humble you. The phone calls will humble you. The owners will humble you, and then going home at the end of your day, not knowing if you're going to make money tomorrow, that will humble you. So you've got to stay focused and build a plan that's going to lead to opportunities 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. How can you make it more? I always go back to, how can you make one of the most unpredictable businesses more predictable?
Yeah, well said. I was having a conversation with a new broker the other day, and he was asking me what I'd recommend for his first year or so. And it's very similar to what you're saying is I said you really want to have two lanes that you're driving down simultaneously. The first lane is you do want to get some opportunities coming your way right now, because this could be a very tough business. Whether you're on the ownership side, development side, brokerage side, whatever it is, industrial real estate can just be a tough business if you don't get early wins. Because you're right, you're making all these calls, you're doing all this work, you're going home, and you might not have had anything to show for it. That's really tough, mentally tough for a cash flow situation. So you do want to find those quick wins, but on the other lane, the other road that you're also driving on, you want to have those long-term objectives where you might talk to a guy and he says, "You know what, I might want to sell, but it's 5 years down the road." Well, that doesn't help you now, but that's wealth building activities. You have your cash flow activities, which you're trying to chase stuff where people want to sell or buy or lease, whatever it is right now or in the near future. And then you also need to have those long-term objectives where you're putting that into a database. It could even be a simple Excel file. 2030. These are the guys that are interested in selling in 2030. And now you've got that logged, that you can start creating that system. And you alluded to this as well, is how do you develop a system for brokerage? If you have those short-term ones that you can work on, anytime you don't have anything short-term, you can look at your long-term list. say, oh yeah, I didn't talk to C'Jon. He owns a property in South Florida. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he said he wants to sell in 2030. I'm just going to give him a call and see if anything changed. And now all of a sudden you can start picking and choosing where you want to spend your time. And as you start getting a little bit more cash flow or a little bit more money in your bank, then you can start allocating more time to building that true wealth building. And I'd equate it to buyers as well. As for there's people on here that chase and buy industrial properties. Is you Everyone wants to buy a property right now. And there's so much money sitting on the sidelines waiting to place it and put it into a property. But don't neglect that there might be properties that you plant the seed right now that you might not benefit from that plant for 3, 4 years down the road. So I think that is really key. What is your system for checking all that? Do you have a CRM that you're doing, or how do you formalize the process of I guess compartmentalizing people that want to do something right now, perhaps people that want to do something early 2026, and then people that might not want to do anything indefinitely?
I would say in brokerage, you do have the boutique shops that will handle leasing, sales, property management, all that stuff. You'll have some guys who do a little bit of everything. I'll speak specifically because I only do investment sales. Our team, we use CRM. You have to track every single conversation. You have to track every single meeting, every call. It all needs to be tracked. So essentially, I'll have my list. You'll try to build a database. Ideally, you do that before you start calling. You maybe have a database of 1,000 properties. But a lot of guys will just tap into a market and start calling owners, and that's fine too. But if you have a conversation with an owner, you're obviously trying to push for a meeting, try to get them in person, put a face to the name, and see if there's an opportunity to do anything. Those notes will go into our CRM. We have a CRM here at CBRE. I also have my own personal CRM, and this is a shout out to my buddy Ian Stroud, who created Clarity through Notion. And this is my own personal CRM where I'm tracking the same amount of information that I have in our CBRE CRM, but I'm doing it in a different way. And I would classify when I speak to an owner, and if they don't want to meet with me, but I had a conversation with them, I would classify them as a C owner. They're not looking to do anything. Maybe they're not the most pleasant person, but I'll stay in touch with them every 6 to 12 months. The next owner would be someone who may be a little active, but they're not looking to do too much, but they're looking at stuff. They're submitting offers. Maybe that's a B owner. And those people I'll have on a cadence of every, 2 months, 2 to 3 months. If I'm not checking in on them on other deals that we're working on, they're looking at our deal flow. If they're not looking at any of that, every 2 to 3 months, I'm calling that person. Then you got your A players that are active all the time. They're looking at all your deals. They're submitting offers. They're willing to meet with you. You're constantly in conversation with them. I mean, those guys you're probably naturally talking to every 2 to 3 weeks, anyways. And those guys are the ones that you're nurturing a lot. But everything has to be tracked through a CRM. And it's funny, my partner Tyler Coleman, he said this. He's like, to me and my other partner who came on once he started to build a team, you guys are going to quickly become overwhelmed if you're not putting every single conversation, meeting, touch point in the CRM, because you will forget when you become busy with deals. You will have so many inquiries. You're not going to remember the guy who told you to call him 2 weeks or a month from now because he'd be willing to meet or he is thinking about selling, because you're going to be too busy and you're going to be, like you said, meeting with people, having so many conversations, working on active deals. So if you rely solely on your head, or I know a lot of guys that use their Microsoft Outlook as their own CRM. Whatever it is, you have to be granular. And I love what Bob is doing is, I think he's a lot further along than he lets us off to be with regards to how far he's using AI with his business and CRM. It's probably so robust and so far along that none of us could compete. But it's essentially why I'm also using Notion as a CRM as well, because you've got to find ways to allow AI and technology to propel your CRM forward. You want to be able to know when you should talk to somebody again, not just manually inputting. Because if you're having enough conversations a day, and I no longer think that you have to have 100 calls a day. I definitely think that if you can get 25 to 50 calls, maybe a little bit more, and then at least, maybe 10 to 15 conversations, that's a good day. I used to think you needed, hundreds and hundreds, and I just that's not really how you move the business forward. You've got to have meaningful conversations every day. You've got to have meetings with people, and you need to track all of that. It has to be tracked, track. That's you. If you don't, then we're going back to what we were just talking about, a volume scale, a volume business where you're just like you pounding and you're just looking for immediate ripe fruit. And and I'll quickly touch and let you jump in again. If you are doing something that's a little bit more mixed, you are representing buyers, you are doing some leasing, you are doing a little bit of exclusive representation, even more so why you need a CRM, because you're not going to remember, I reached out about these 5 properties for a buyer and I got all of the information and I've got to present all of this to them by next Wednesday, but I also got to get this rep agreement out and I've got to do a VOV. And then, oh, I also got these 3 tenants that are looking for space. You will quickly, you will quickly lose control of all of that. And then it also builds the reputation that you're not someone who does what they say. Your buyers and your clients always have to follow up with you, and that is not how you want to run your business.
Yeah, very well said. This is a bit of a crude analogy, and I don't think there's any girls or women on the call. But maybe if you're watching this later, don't hold this against me. But it's if a guy's going to a bar and he wants to meet a woman, and he goes up to one girl, introduces himself. Maybe she shows a little bit of interest, maybe she doesn't, but he moves on. Maybe you talk to 100 girls, maybe one girl lets you buy her a drink. If, however, you actually went and you remembered everything that you're talking about, the girl in the red dress, she was talking to me about whatever, her job, and she's a nurse and she's likes these things. And if you actually remembered all of that, at some point, if you were able to go back and look and say, oh, that girl over there, this is what she likes, you're going to have much better odds of connecting with that girl. And it does go both ways as well for girls that are talking to guys. It's the same with trying to prospect. You're never going to remember if you're talking to 100 girls at a bar, you're never going to remember all 100 of them. It's just impossible. But if you had a way of tracking it and you actually knew something about them, you're just increasing your chances of a connection there. So crude analogy, but I think that's spot on with how we have to approach this business. Buyers, sellers, brokers, anybody, if you're a mortgage broker, lawyer, anything, if you're interested in prospecting, and it goes back to what you said earlier, business development. That's really all that we're trying to do is just we're trying to develop business. And again, if you're a buyer or a seller, you're trying to do business development so that you could either find more properties or you could find a potential buyer or you could find a broker to work with you. I think that you need to have a way of managing all that data because it becomes like your mentor said is it becomes overwhelming so quickly where you just have so much data coming in that it's impossible to manage and reconcile it all. So I think that's a key point, and that really does speak to the business development part. Yes, you have to pick up the phone and you have to actually make these outbound calls, and it comes with the good and the bad. The good you have to track, and the bad you have to track as well. So you can tweak it and adjust and say, well, last time I talked to this guy, I brought up a market report and he said he didn't care about market reports. So I'm going to try and twist this a little bit. And this time I'm going to talk to him about an opportunity that just came up down the road. So tracking all the data is just so imperative on that. So make the calls, track it. Love that so far. Can you share a success and perhaps a negative story, and maybe start with the negative story so we can go into a positive one? But so, and maybe it's just a common thing that you hear. Maybe it's an owner that says you keep hearing the same thing from owners when you're trying to make these warm introductions. But anything that stands out, any negative experiences you've had doing all the cold calling that you have?
So I will say the one-off owners who own one building and owned it for 30 years, if they, hang up or curse you out or not interested, those don't bother me anymore at all. Uh, I would say the ones that these owners own a lot of property, and majority of the time they're fairly nice over the phone, or at least respectful, even if they decline, don't want to talk to you or whatever. But for instance, there was a guy I can't think of right now. He owns maybe two or 300,000 square feet of small bay industrial in an area that I've been farming. And I've called him so many times. I've probably called him 7 or 8 times before I connected with him. And he finally answered, and it was so quick. I was prepared. I knew all of his properties. I had this report. I had some deals that I was working on. I wanted to get him on the phone, share what we're up to, show that we're credible, show that we're active, and try to find a way to meet this guy in person. But within the first 30 seconds, like, yeah, not interested. No thanks. Yep, no thanks. And boom, hung up the phone. What was hard about that is I just know that he controls such good property, and I know how hard it's going to be to win him over, and how hard it's going to be to eventually get a meeting with them. It could take years. It could be the whole Bob Knackle story. And I know there's a lot of guys that I'm leaving voicemails to, and guys that I'm calling and they're not answering. And I know they're listening to it. I know they're seeing my name on their number. And eventually I'll probably get them years from now, and they'll say, "Yeah, I've listened to all your voicemails," and same as Bob's story, and eventually find a way to get in the door. Another story which was difficult is, I had in the same market, guy who's very, very active, owns great property, and cold called him, got him on the phone, had a good initial conversation, but he was very quick to say, yeah, I'm not, I have a broker I'm doing business with. I'm exclusive to him. Yeah, I'm never going to do anything without him. And I, respect that. Just want to build a relationship. You own industrial. We're active. Completely respect that you have a relationship with this broker, but just want to build a relationship and hopefully provide some value, even if you continue to use them. No, not interested. Click. So those are the ones that I would say are slightly sad in a way. Probably more so the ones that haunt me a little bit more are the ones that I call, and I'm a little more soft and not so jugular. Do you want to sell? And try to build a relationship, try to build some rapport, try to meet, and then you see their property on the market, a month later. Those are like, man, I should just ask if you wanted to sell, but you realize that you can't go into every conversation like that. And that probably was already moving before I even called. So it's not like I would have been in a bidding war trying to bring a buyer, and I'm not trying to do that. So that's probably a negative story. A positive that we just brought on is same market, owner of this property, or at least the properties I was calling, knew he owned about 300,000 or 400,000 square feet of small bay industrial in this market. Didn't know he owned outside of that area, but called him probably 5 or 6 times earlier this year. No answer. Called his leasing agent with, they're all in house. Called her, left her 2 or 3 voicemails. Never got a hold of her. Always would come across his properties when I was like looking in the area or circle prospecting, and just thinking, yeah, I'm never going to sell this guy's property. I said that I will never be able to sell his stuff. And I just kept remembering, you've got to just keep picking up the phone. If I've never talked to him and he hasn't told me he doesn't want to meet with me, and he hasn't told me he'll never sell with me, I have to just keep calling. I just kept calling, kept calling. It's probably 10 calls now. And I finally get a hold of him. I actually called a different number. I kept skip tracing as many different numbers as I could. And I found the mobile and I called it. And lo and behold, he answers the phone. And the first thing I did was I was just trying to pitch some deal, that I want to ask him if he wanted to sell. I knew I just wanted to get in front of him, provide some deal flow. And he said, "No, I'm not looking to buy anything. Hard to buy stuff right now in this market." And I just said, "Oh, are you local? Love to meet in person." And he said, "No, I'm I'm in Minnesota." And I was like, "Oh, well, you ever come down here in Florida? He's like, yeah, I come all the time, but you try me in a couple months. So I put it on my calendar, see everything in the CRM, said he'll be here in a couple months. To that day, I call him. And it was, I, I didn't even, I had other meetings. I was just like, it's on my calendar. This is what I have to do. I'm gonna call him. He doesn't answer. I said, hey, I just want to see if I can meet with you next Tuesday. You said you'd be down. He didn't answer. It's on a Friday. He calls me back later that day because he was opposed to meeting. He's like, yeah, next Tuesday's fine. Come meet me at this office. I'm freaking out. I'm excited. Unfortunately, my partner had golf playing, so he couldn't even come with me. So I'm coming into here, prepared but nervous and excited. Meet up with him, and we had a great conversation. Led with rapport. These meetings, you're just trying to put a face to the name. You're trying to get to know them. You're sharing deals. You're talking about them. Learn about his how he got started. Didn't realize that he owned almost 2 million square feet of office and multifamily up there and sold that all. He was a huge player and 80 years old now. And at the end of the meeting, I was like, look, would love to would love to work with you in some way. If there's something you'd love us to underwrite, I'm happy to put in the work. And he said, sure. And did the work. He gave us a huge portfolio, $30 million portfolio, and couldn't believe I got it. That's a win where you feel like it's not worth keep calling. You're only looking for the ones that are going to answer and make you feel good right now. If a guy answers the phone and he's on the phone with me for 20, 30 minutes and yeah, I'll sell. Those are the ones I'm least excited about because I know this guy's saying that to every other broker. But the ones that you have to kind of dig into and you have to push for a meeting and finally get them in person and you realize that they're great people, but they just don't like meeting with a lot of guys because every guy he told me, he's like, most guys are calling to see if I'll sell. I don't meet with them. But so, you were persistent and you provided some information that was good and I appreciated that and you weren't pushy. So hopefully that wasn't too wordy, Chad, but I would say these types of conversations compound. And if you're not pushy it's so, Bob Knackle is so true. It is so simple. It is so hard though. And the hard part is still picking up the phone when you get rejected, still picking up the phone when you feel like there's no way I'm going to overstep this relationship. But you just got to call people and you got to just be nice to them and have something to say, know how to work in credibility, but cool off and just say, look, is it a terrible idea that we meet? You own industrial. I sell industrial. We're happy to just put a face in there. I know you're not looking to do anything right now. And a lot of times those guys like, I respect that. Sure. Let's grab coffee. And those have all led to really great relationships when you just realize it's a relationship business. It's a people business. You just got to get along with people, think about them, provide value, and eventually ask for the sale.
So well said. I loved it. I loved that story, teeing it up from being a negative on how it can suck to sharing a story on how you nurtured a relationship to list a $30 million portfolio. So first, congrats on that. That's awesome. That's such a great story to hear. I want to go back to Bob again on that. And it sounds like we're referencing Bob a lot, but that's because we're both just such big fans of his. We'll have to post a link to the interview that we did, Wyatt, if you remember to do that, because I've gone back. I've probably listened to it 3 or 4 times myself now, just because he had so much wisdom in there. He just posted something on social media the other day saying that before he got into the business some 40 years ago, he was a trained accountant, went to school for accounting. And now he said, I couldn't even tell you whether a accounts receivable, rents owing, I couldn't even tell you if that was on the debit or the credit side. He's like, I have no idea. He's like, the people aren't paying us to be accountants. They have accountants. They're paying us because we are making connections constantly. And I think that that's such a profound way that you described going from what can be setbacks to the opportunities that are involved with it. If you just have that mindset of giving some value, friendly, no pressure, can we start a relationship, or does it make sense for us to talk? I'm in this business, you're in this business. Nothing bad is going to come from this. I think that that's such a great way of phrasing it, and you hit it on the head. It's simple, but man, is it difficult at the same time. I think that this will go down as an episode that I'm going to recommend to people so often, because just the way that you describe that is just absolute money. Everybody would benefit. Everybody in any sales capacity at all would benefit from hearing you talk about that. So a slow clap, man. That was just absolutely fantastic.
I appreciate it, especially coming from you. I would say that commercial real estate is right now. I'm running my first marathon next Sunday, and I've been running for a little bit, but I I really on these runs. I mean, these are long runs, man. 2 hour runs, 3 hour runs, and I don't do it with headphones anymore. I'm just running and I'm just thinking and I'm processing. And what's so interesting about running is that it's such a slow path to getting faster. You would think, oh, I could just go out there and push myself. And well, you push yourself too hard, you start to get injured. Or if you push yourself too slow, then you're not getting enough traction. And I almost feel like it's the same thing. I think about just you're cold calling, you're building relationships, and it's just taking forever. I mean, you're thinking there's no, how do people make money doing this? You would think to yourself sometimes, how do people make money in commercial real estate? It's so hard to get deals done, but it's such a simple game. Pick up the phone, do some research, you meet with people, you ask for the business, and you work on it. But it takes a long time. And I think about it so much about running. You just got to go out there and run a lot consistently without getting discouraged that it's taking longer than you'd like. And this marathon that I'm running next Sunday, I think about it so much on these really long 15, 16 mile, preparation runs. And you realize that it's one step at a time. It's one day at a time, waking up early and feeling like, man, it's gonna be long. It's gonna take forever. I don't want to run in the cold. I don't want to do this. But it's just choosing to get up, put your shoes on, and go and just run. And every time you develop a little bit more love for it, some days it sucks, some days it's great. But you start to love the act of getting up and getting better. And I think I deeply believe the same about commercial real estate because waking up, there's a lot of days where I would wake up and just feel dread. And I got to go and put myself in an uncomfortable position and call these people who don't want to talk to me. And it's overwhelming. And am I going to make it? It's too hard. My deal fell apart. But I remind myself the same thing as if when I put one foot in front of the other, just put my shoes on. Some days I just say, put your clothes on and get in the car. Just get ready and go to work. And as soon as I get in my car, my mind just starts to shift to, I just get on the phones today. Just pick up the phone. Just pick up one call. Just call one person and the ball starts moving. You have one conversation and you get excited to call that next owner. And then you start to get a meeting and then you get someone who's like, yeah, I might consider potentially selling. You're like, it all started this morning with me wishing I would just stay in bed. And I just go back to you've gotta just have enough guts to get up and do the work. And that's where the heart is. It's not it's not hard to learn how to underwrite a property. It's not hard to learn how to evaluate a 13,000 square foot industrial deal. It's not hard to pull comps. It's not hard to understand a lease. It's what's hard is getting up every day and doing the same thing without knowing if it's going to work. And that's, I'm starting to see it. I'm getting into that field where I'm starting to see that's what truly separates the Bob Nackles of the world. And even, the other notable brokers out there. There's so many. And the ones that just quit because you've got some really, really good, sharp and charming guys out there and girls out there who can just get people to consider selling or get people to move. But it's really just the nuts and bolts of the character of, can you just get up and do hard things every day? And eventually it's not hard. It's just something that you do, but it is hard to do the same thing. And I think guys like you, who I look up to, who have been doing this for 20 plus years, it's just showing up and doing the same thing every single day that really pushes you forward and gets you excited. I'm in this phase. I hope it doesn't go away, but I'm in this phase right now where I am excited to get to work because I just know the willingness of to get on the phone and put myself in an uncomfortable situation to try to get this guy or gal to meet with me and potentially do business with them. But it is one of the hacks of becoming extremely wealthy. The amount of money that you can make in brokerage or even as a principal, just willing to just cold call somebody. I like how I now try to use what Bob Nackel says. These are all business development calls now because I'm already cold called all of them. They know me now, but it's so crazy to think that you can just pick up the phone and call a multimillionaire. The guy that I'm selling the deal for, he's worth over $500 million. And the fact that I can just call him, find his number, call him, and find a way to work with him, and just sit around him and listen to him speak and listen to how he built his portfolio and realize it's not as far away as you think. Just getting yourself in the room in front of some of these guys, it's the win in of itself. You may never do business with them, but to sit in front of them and for them to like you and to know you, I mean, that goes so far. So I think that's such an awesome part about commercial real estate in our business is we're calling on some of the most successful people in the world that are just so simple. And you realize it's not that hard. It's just get up and do the work.
It's a mic drop moment right there. We're at the top of the hour, and actually a few minutes past, and super respectful of your time. We're gonna have to do a part two on this if you're up for it in
Oh,
2026.
I love to hear.
I would love to dive into this more. I mean, your enthusiasm and your energy and your passion for this are not unnoticed, and I think anybody that's watching this will have a deep appreciation for how good you are taking that so-called simple component of the business and injecting it with enthusiasm and energy and just that zest for it. I think it's awesome. It's inspiring me, so I'm sure other people will as well. If there are principals or other brokers that will be watching this as well, if somebody did want to reach out to you and either get on your list for other availabilities or perhaps even work with you down the road, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
People can call me, text me, or email me. My phone number is 561-225-9328. My email is cjon.armstead@cbre. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm active there. I'm on Instagram, semi-active. But if anyone is, I do this all the time. I talk with a lot of guys across the nation, other brokers, and obviously other principals. But they are curious about what I'm doing, cold calling, and I just love sharing what's working for me. And I'm always open. And I always say I'm an open door. You can call me if you're feeling like you hate this and you just need someone to vent to and share how hard it is. And then I'm also here to just I'm happy to share what's working for me because I know that you believe this as well. There's so much business out there for all of us, and we just get so much better if we work together and lean on each other in the business because there's not a lot. There's a lot of us, but there's not a lot of us, and there's not a lot of us that will last more than 3 to 5 years. So we need to band arms and be each other's support. So that's my info. Feel free to reach out to me.
Love it. We'll put all that contact information in the show notes as well, so people can tune into that. And yeah, we definitely need to do a part two. It's already looking forward to it. We'll touch base offline and tee up something for next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much for joining me, and good luck on your marathon. It's I hope you meet your goals on that, and I'm sure you've put in the training. So good luck on that on Sunday.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and C'Jon especially, thank you so much for sharing an hour of your wisdom, and looking forward to the next one.